Hello. Hello, everybody. Hello there, everyone out there in LinkedIn land and beyond. Uh, Great to see you all, although I can't see every single one of you, but great to see you all. My name is Seth Borko. I am the head of Skift Research, and I am thrilled to be here with a whole bunch of members of my team talking to you all today about our latest report. This report is the State of Travel 2024, 350 plus insights about the future of travel. What's happening in our industry? Where is it going? What do you need to know? It's a really great resource. I think a lot of Skift research reports are great resources, but not all Skift research reports are free. This one actually is a free to download report. You can go find that on the skift.com website. I think we're going to put the link in the chat. So thank you all so much for joining us. Let's jump into it. I've got a little bit of a housekeeping announcements we need to talk about. So I am joined today by a couple of wonderful members of the Skift research team. I'm joined by some of our senior analysts, Pranavi, Varsha, and Robin. They are from all across the globe, actually. I don't know if you know that Skift Research is a really global team. We've got South Africa, we've got India, we've got the United Kingdom, and of course, New York. New York is, of course, its own country. It's not the United States, it's New York. All joined on this call here to talk about it. I know we sometimes put in the chat where you're joining from. Please let us know where you're joining from. We're going to talk to you today a lot about what we see and what's happening in the state of travel. Before we go too far into this, though, I do want to pause for a moment and thank the sponsors of this report. We really could not have done it without a lot of sponsorships and support from across the industry. I really want to thank, in particular, Allianz and Parity and Cody. They really made this report possible for us, and so thank you for helping us out and for supporting us. So I'm going to jump into what we're going to talk about today. Today's LinkedIn Live is going to be, we're going to aim for about 30 minutes of us talking and about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A. If you guys have questions, if there's no questions, we'll end earlier. I want to jump in right now to what we're going to be discussing. So first of all, I already mentioned the authors of the report. You've got people on the call today, but actually the whole research team was involved in writing this report. They are all rock stars. So thank you so much to the authors of this report. By the way, every single one of these people is going to be at the Skift Global Forum in just a couple of weeks. If you're listening, you want to talk to any people, you want to talk to me, talk to members of my team or anyone else at Skift, you know the place to do it. It's the Skift Global Forum. All right, let's jump into it. So this state of travel is a very big report. We don't have time to do 350 slides here today. What we're going to do is just excerpts. Our favorite excerpts, basically there's four of us on the call today. Each of us are going to pick two of our favorite sections and do a brief 3 to 4 minute excerpt of what we found most interesting about that section. These are the big picture topics that we're going to cover today. As you can see, we're going to cover a lot, but there's a lot we're not going to cover. If these are particular areas of interest for you, please put them in the chat, put them in the Q&A, or of course, download the report and let us know what you think. All right, I think that is enough housekeeping. Who's on the call, what we're going to talk about. We got to thank our sponsors. Let's jump into the actual state of travel today. And I want to kick us off. I want to kick us off by talking about the economic landscape. This is on the minds of a lot of people. I mean, rightly so. We just did a bunch of stories on Skift. Is there a potential recession? We saw the stock market itself. Now the stock market, at least in the US, is back to where it was. A little bit of whiplash. What is going on in the economy? Well, we think in general, things are decent, pretty good. Economists broadly, they predict moderate growth and tame inflation. There are some exceptions to that rule. Europe in particular is an exception of slower economic growth, but overall moderate growth. And that's a good thing and supportive for the travel industry. This is a theme that I like to talk about a lot, but what we are increasingly seeing in the travel industry is just plain old normal. We used to talk during the pandemic about, wow, this is the new normal. We're all doing this. This is the new normal. We're all doing that. We're just plain old normal now. We're seeing growth come back to mid to high single digits on average for the industry, which is historically where it's been. And that's a good thing, right? One of the things we wrote in the introduction to the State of Travel report is that this is 2024 in particular, especially going to 2025, is going to be one of the first times in many years now where we don't have any particular headwinds or tailwinds from COVID, right? There was obviously huge pandemic collapse and then a huge revenge travel rebound. Feels like we're mostly back to normal. And you know what? That's a good thing. I'd rather have slightly slower growth, no revenge travel, and just be back to normal than to be in kind of one of these up and down swings that the COVID era brought us. I think we can take a lot of comfort that travel remains a really, really high priority for customers. Travel is a top splurge category. When we asked in a survey of young people, millennials not even that young anymore, but of younger people, millennials and Gen Z spenders, where were you going to increase your spending over the next 12 months, particularly in more discretionary categories, not like rent and groceries? Travel ranks incredibly highly, really at the top of the list of splurge priorities for young people. One of the things I've been talking about with my team is that, maybe we talk about recession, maybe the travel industry is not necessarily fully recession proof, but maybe it's become more recession resistant, is maybe the word I would use, as travelers get more and more accustomed and say that this is going to be a higher and higher priority for them. I also think it's important to think not just about the short term of what's happened in terms of how can we weather a slowdown and how can travel normalize, which it is, and I think we can, but to think big picture about what's happening across the globe and the sort of long-term tailwinds that our industry faces. I think it's really important to know travel has seen a dramatic globalization over the last 20 years. This is the share of low and middle income countries as a share of international travel, rising by almost 10 percentage points over the last 20 years to be nearly 40% of all international travel right before the pandemic. The pandemic numbers skew things a little bit, but this is a good baseline of where we are in the trend line. We are seeing more people from developing and emerging countries take up travel. And so I think it's important to think that, yeah, we talk about the economy in terms of the US or maybe in terms of Europe, but there's a huge world out there of travelers, and the economy on a global basis does continue to grow. And over the long term, that is very supportive of the travel industry. This is one of the favorite slides that I've made, talking about travel's shifting center of gravity. And this is supposed to be a visual representation of this trend that I'm talking about. How do we read this chart? What we did was we looked at all the destinations that international travelers visit. Every single destination, basically put a pin on the map for every destination that every traveler visits. And then we sort of average those pins together. There's a lot of pins on Europe. There's a lot of pins in North America. And so the center of gravity, the average of where the average, if you think about like the median visitor, where do they visit? It's not a real place. It's somewhere around Spain. That was where the average traveler would visit in 1990. But what we can see is that over the last 30 years, that center of gravity has shifted pretty dramatically. And today it's somewhere around Greece. It's not a precise science. This is not exact math, but it's the attempt is to show you that the rise of travel to and from the Middle East, to and from Asia, to and from Africa is having a real impact on the center of gravity of travel. The industry is becoming less Eurocentric, less America-centric, and is becoming more of a global phenomenon. And over the next 10, 20, 30 years, that will support our industry over the long run. That's a bit of the big picture economic landscape. That's my first section. We're going to shift gears and talk a little about consumer trends, consumer insights. What does the traveler want? And for that, I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Varsha Arora.
Hello, everyone. So this is Varsha joining you guys from India. So just building on what Seth just discussed, travel has remained resilient despite shifts in the economic landscape. However, consumer behavior has evolved over time, and we expect that it's going to be continually changing. Now, I picked this section today to highlight the key consumer trends that we are observing. So let's just start by looking at some group travel dynamics. Now, solo travel is one of the traveler segments which is expected to see a dramatic surge, with the global solo travel market expected to grow by 200% in the next decade. Now, interestingly, our report shows that it's the older generation which is actually driving this trend. And companies, in fact, have already started responding to this change in dynamics. So, for example, Intrepid Travel recently launched a solo only tours, validating a growing demand in this particular segment. Now, having said that, while solo travel is on the rise, it still only represents a very small section, which is around 14% of travelers. In contrast, among almost like half of all travelers want to travel with their families. Now, this is a significant portion of the market that we're talking about, which makes it very crucial for travel suppliers to understand the nuances and the dynamics and the needs of family travelers. Now, according to our recent survey, a significant number of people plan to either increase or at least maintain the spending on family travel over the coming year, which makes us believe that this sector is sort of poised for growth and will be very lucrative as well. Now, as we explore the broader spectrum of traveler preferences, luxury travel is another segment experiencing notable growth and strong investor confidence. Now, industry professionals have already pointed out that, Seth, if we could go to the luxury travel slide, please. Industry professionals point out that travel has sort of become the number one priority of the affluent individuals, and our survey data sort of corroborates with it. So if you look at the chart on the right, there's a clear trend. As income rises, so does the importance placed on travel. Additionally, if you think about the supply side of it, we have data from STR that confirms that there is a significant increase in the construction of luxury hotels, outpacing other chain scales, which essentially just indicates how robust investor confidence is in the space, and there is a long-term growth prospect that you can expect in this market. In a similar vein, as travelers are seeking personalized and high-end experiences, there is also a growing interest in integrating wellness and health into travel. Now, wellness tourism is one space which is again like projected to become a big industry of around 1.4 trillion by 2027. Now, the sector has seen a strong rebound post pandemic, given that people became more conscious and started in sort of including wellness as a very intrinsic value. um, if you look at this slide, we know that people are actually willing to pay a premium for wellness related amenities. So, for example, domestic wellness tourists spend around 175% more than an average domestic tourist. So that's the point that we want to highlight, that there is a growing commitment to health and well-being as key elements of travel. Now, shifting from wellness to a broader category of experiences, which wellness also falls into, we see that experiences have become the heart of modern travel. Um, yeah, okay. Travelers today are increasingly prioritizing unique and memorable experiences over traditional consumption. Now, if you look at this chart, you'll notice that while spending on basic goods is still a large share, because obviously you spend on essentials first and then you spend on experiences and discretionary items like entertainment and travel. But what we want to draw your attention to here is that there is a growing consumer demand for personalized and enriching travel experiences. Now, lastly, very quickly, I want to touch on an emerging trend on the booking side of it. Now, we all know that digital platforms and especially social media has been used profusely with respect to travel planning, travel research, and just getting inspired to travel, right? But what's interesting is, if you look at this slide, we recently asked travelers in our survey of how comfortable were they booking directly via social media, and to our surprise, the comfort level has been increasing. Now, this shift essentially means that suppliers will have to be thinking very seriously about integrated digital solutions that not only capture attention but also facilitate seamless bookings right where the travelers start spending their time thinking about travel. So with that, I'll just now hand over to Robin, who will be discussing another very interesting trend, which is sustainability.
Thank you, Varsha. Hello, everybody. Happy to be joining you from Cape Town, South Africa. As Varsha mentioned, I'm going to be discussing sustainability. The reason I chose this section is sustainability is obviously a growing concern in the travel industry, as it is for many industries, but travel has to grapple with several industry-specific challenges like the prevalence of greenwashing and hard to decarbonize subsectors like airlines, for example. Despite these challenges, there are some positive signs for sustainable travel. Looking at the consumer side, our data shows that consumers are hungry for more sustainable travel options, with majorities across 5 countries, the US, UK, Australia, and key growth source markets of India and China, agreeing that it's important to choose travel service providers that prioritize sustainable business practices. We can also see that they express a willingness to act upon this, and they are open to paying more for sustainable options. So this is a very positive sign, although there is the important caveat that this doesn't always guarantee it will translate into action. That's the pesky say-do gap, as we call it. Nevertheless, it's a positive indication of consumer value alignment and with regard to sustainability. And interestingly, we can see that this is most pronounced in India and China. There was another encouraging result in terms of consumers being willing to take action on sustainability, even if it inconveniences them in some way. Again, the same caveat applies, but this is still encouraging. Again, interestingly, a very strong positive response on this in India, which is, of course, a crucial growing outbound travel market. So we also looked at this in terms of age groups. We could see quite a strong alignment with sustainable values among younger travelers, in this case, millennials and Gen Z. When we asked what their main concerns are with regard to travel, these travelers expressed the most concern in relation to climate change and the potential negative impacts of travel on communities and cultural preservation. In addition, we found that their travel motivations were largely a desire to connect with nature and a sense of discovery and cultural immersion. And this is quite good news, as it tracks closely with emerging trends in sustainable travel around, for example, regenerative tourism and more holistic approaches to community and social aspects in travel. The spending power in travel is increasingly transferring to these age groups, and their values and priorities are well aligned with the direction that sustainable travel is largely moving in. So we have to touch on greenwashing. Consumers are very suspicious of greenwashing, with almost half saying that they would only trust sustainability claims if they're backed up with some kind of independent third-party certification. And this is understandable given the industry's history with this. And it speaks to the importance of third-party certification and being able to back up your claims. The importance of being able to credibly demonstrate your impact has been clearly something of a running theme in every sustainability-related project that I've worked on since joining Skift in February. For example, we did some work this year on the carbon offset market, and that's a good example of the potential pitfalls in greenwashing with travel. There's a bit more detail on this in the report that you can find, but in short, the overall incentive structure tends to encourage greenwashing. So it's another example, and this and other examples are really a call to action for the whole industry to ensure that they can back up their claims, and this will build trust among a consumer base who we've already seen are both suspicious of greenwashing, but also very receptive to genuine sustainable travel options. So I see this as the main challenge and opportunity to take away for the industry as a whole. So with that, I'll hand over to Pranavi.
Great. Thanks, Robin. And thanks, everyone, for your questions. Please keep them coming. Post them in the chat box on this LinkedIn Live, and we'll get to them at the end of the session. So yes, I'm going to spend the next kind of 3 to 5 minutes talking about venture capital trends in travel. And I really picked this section because I think the analysis we did here it's based on a huge database, which we've really spent years building. And it's kind of analysis that you won't really find anywhere else, especially in this much detail. So if you go into the next chart, yeah, so this really is the headline chart. So you can see that in 2023, venture capital funding into the travel industry really hit a decade low, only $2.9 billion of VC investment in 2023. Compare that to nearly $9 billion in 2019. So today today funding is 70% below 2019 levels. And if you go into the next slide, we can see that, in line with the struggling funding environment, this tough macroeconomic environment that we're in, we're seeing that there is an ongoing shift towards late stage deals. So on this chart, you can see that in 2023, there was a drop in funding levels, on absolute funding levels, across every deal stage besides the late stage Series F funding round. So what does that show? I think it shows that in today's environment, when investors do decide to invest more money, it will be in those safe, mature companies. And if you go on to the next slide, we can see that, even though there was an overall decline in VC funding in 2023, I think there's reasons to be optimistic. And, interestingly, we can see that there are pockets of growth within the key areas of investor interest. And you can see those in the blue columns here. So those are tours and activities, AI, perhaps unsurprisingly, and also hospitality employment. And kind of on the topic of tours and activities, we can see on this slide that actually the two most funded companies in 2023 were those companies in the tours and activities space. So Klook in Asia, Get Your Guide in Europe. And that really goes to show that today, experiences is a very attractive, very opportunistic sector to be in the travel industry at the moment. And on this kind of theme of, being optimistic into 2024, 2025, I think we're pretty hopeful for a recovery in venture capital funding in travel. So on this chart, we can see that, I love this chart. I think it very interestingly shows that there's actually a very good correlation between interest rates in the US, at least interest rates in the US, and VC funding raised for travel companies in the US. So based off this correlation, you could say that for every 0.1% decrease or 0.1% cut in the interest rate, that could see an increase of $50 million of VC investment into travel industry. And I think we can expect further interest rate cuts into the next few months, into the next few years. And those are some reasons for us to be optimistic for increased VC funding into 2024 and 25. So on that cheery note, I'll pass it over back to Varsha, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Pranavi. So we are already halfway through this discussion, and having discussed the consumer trends and the investor trends, it is clear that the travel industry is undergoing significant changes. There's a lot happening. But the good part about it is that it creates valuable opportunities for travel suppliers and businesses in this sector. Now, in this section, I would want to discuss the most impactful business trends that are reshaping the travel landscape. So let's start with what is happening at a global level with respect to tourism flows. So as Seth mentioned, travel center of gravity is moving eastwards. India and China are becoming major players in the outbound travel market. From 2008 to 2019, India's outbound tourism spending grew at an impressive compounded annual growth rate of 17%, and China sort of followed very closely at 16%. However, the outbound travel spending per capita for both the countries is extremely low at 2% for India and around 11% for China, which presents a significant growth opportunity for travel suppliers to leverage. Now, let's move to business travel, which was hit the hardest during the pandemic, leading to a very, very high skepticism about its recovery. However, business travel is back and is expected to rebound strongly. The Global Business Travel Association, GBTA, predicts a return to pre-pandemic levels this year, which is around $1.4 trillion. Now, cost remains a key concern for businesses, leading to a shift towards a more cost conscious approach to business travel. Additionally, sustainability is a growing concern, with many companies wanting to invest in eco-friendly travel options, even if it is at a premium. Now, given those constraints, companies are focusing on minimizing expenses while still meeting business needs. So, which results in interesting trends like fewer but longer trips, etc. Now, as business travel rebounds, blended travel is also on the rise. In fact, many travel managers consider that blended travel is the new business travel. So, over the past year, around 45% of travel managers have sort of experienced an increase in this trend within their companies, within their employee subset. Now, if you look at this chart here, Euromonitor predicts that spending by those combining business and leisure will almost double, reaching around $360 billion by 2027. Now, since we are talking about business travel, blended travel, I think it's just noteworthy that about its one of its most lucrative subsegment, which is MICE, meetings, incentives, conferences, and exhibition sector. Now, MICE is also a subsector which is experiencing a strong resurgence, and it is expected to grow to around $2 trillion by 2032. Now, meeting professionals are extremely confident and optimistic that in the second half of 2024, there'll be a resurgence of in-person meetings as well. And Skift recently released a report on the top trends in this MICE sector, which will be a very good resource for the people who are interested in this particular sector. Let's now shift our focus on something very nuanced, which is the loyalty space. Now, I just thought that this chart is super interesting because it just shows how big a discrepancy there is in the service quality that travel suppliers are offering and in the appeal of their loyalty programs. Now, our survey has shown that only 9% of travelers join travel loyalty programs for brand loyalty. The majority only prioritize discounted travel, right? Which just indicates that loyalty is not anymore about only loyalty. Now, younger travelers, which is the key audience for this loyalty space, they prefer sort of diverse brand interactions. They prefer discounted offerings, personalized offerings. The fact that 1 in 4 leisure travel dollars is spent on chase cards just highlights how the innovation in this particular sector and in reward structures has sort of uh, reshaped loyalty landscape. So the shift here is presenting an opportunity for travel companies to innovate and offer more flexible rewards to align with the evolving traveler preferences. And the final trend, the final business trend I would want to touch on is the focus on customer experience. Now, we have been doing a lot of surveys in different segments, different industries. Our surveys have time and again revealed that customer experience remains a critical factor for travelers when selecting accommodations, transportation, or for that matter, even booking channels. However, our State of Travel report highlights a significant disparity between experience and expectation in the travel sector. This chart here is from PwC. It illustrates the balance between what travelers are actually willing to pay for and the importance they place on different aspects of customer experience. And as you can see, efficiency and personalization are two factors that just stand out. Now, I think that this chart is the answer to so many of the questions that travel brands might have on what to prioritize to meet this evolving consumer needs. And on that note, I will just pass it to Pranavi again, who will be discussing the role of Google in online travel.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Varsha. So I'm going to talk about the online travel space, particularly the role of Google in online travel. If you go into the next slide. So the reason that we decided to do this analysis is it's pretty timely. So in 2021, what Google did is that they introduced free organic results in addition to their paid sponsored listings. And what Google saw is that after introducing those free results, Google saw their booking revenue generated by their hotels platform. They saw that rise 95% between 2019 and 2022. And actually today, more than a third of its booking revenue is coming from those free listings. So clearly very successful. Clearly consumers really, really like these free listings. But I think if you just take a step back and compare the paid listings to the free listings in order to try and understand the difference between the two. So if you go on to the next slide, we can see on this chart that in the paid listings, unsurprisingly, it's the big OTAs, Booking, Expedia, and there are various sub-brands that are dominating the paid listings. And it's particularly Booking.com, which really is paying the most to appear most frequently. And that's the case in every region we analyzed. So no surprises that the major OTAs are dominating the paid listings. If you go on to the next slide, where we're kind of comparing the two, you can see on the chart on the left that, collectively Booking Holdings, Expedia Group, they have 75 to 85% share of those paid listings. But if you look at the chart on the left, you can see that for those free listings, the percentage mix is a lot more democratized. Booking and Expedia still have share, but it's a much smaller share as compared to their share of paid listings. Whilst you can see in the yellow there, other OTAs, smaller OTAs, they have a lot more prominence in those free listings. And what we've seen is that there's really a long tail of small OTAs all bidding for bookings in those free listings. So what Google has done is it's really democratized the distribution of online travel. If you go into the next slide, another key piece of analysis we found is that Google is not only giving prominence to those smaller OTAs, but it's also giving prominence to the direct site. So on this slide, you can see in the blue columns here, you can see that though the direct site features less and less frequently on the free listings as you go from east to west. So you can see the direct site features in 80% of listings in the US, but only 34% of listings in the Middle East. But you can see in the black columns here that every time the direct site does feature, Google will place it on the top of the organic options nearly every single time in every region. So what does that mean? It means that Google is really giving prominence to those direct sites, and it's helping even up that online distribution playing field. So that's just a little snippet, a lot of interesting insights in the full State of the Travel report, and do check that out. So I'll pass it back to Seth to round us off here.
Yeah, so I want to chat a little bit about hotels. And what I want to talk about is how it very much ties into the distribution landscape conversation that Pranav has been having, and especially in terms of the rise of branded hotel groups. I'll just start with a little bit of table setting where global hotel revenue remains strong. It's fully recovered and continues to grow. So we continue to see good performance overall on a revenue basis. I also think it's worth highlighting the difference in chain scales. If you're not a hotelier, RevPAR, that's revenue per available room, that is basically a key metric of unit revenue. And we do see overall, on the whole, in general, good RevPAR growth, and most chain scales are seeing RevPAR growth. One of the weakest chain scales is the economy section. One of the strongest is the higher end luxury and upper upscale sections. So we are seeing a little bit of divergence between the different chain scales, but the balance is that the sector remains, fairly healthy and continues to grow. Again, back to my initial point in the economy, at a more normalized pace of growth, right? We're not seeing, at one point in 2022, we were seeing 20% RevPAR growth. That's not really what's happening anymore, at least in the US. But what I really wanted to talk about, though, was the rise and the consolidation of hotel brands and brand, and the difference between these branded hotels, think the Marriotts, the Hiltons, the IHGs of the world, versus the independence hotels, the mom and pop, the Skift Inn. That's not quite, it's not a real brand. We don't actually have a hotel, but that's sort of differential. And it ties very much into the conversation that Pranav was having about online travel and direct distribution. One of the major trends that we are seeing in the hotel world is the continued rise, continued growth, and continued consolidation of big hotel brands in the marketplace and the landscape. This chart shows you what percent of total supply in each region is branded. The US, nearly 70% of hotels are branded. On the other end, in South America, it's only 40%, still a very large difference. But then we also look in the black bars, what percent of future pipelines, so new hotels that are in development, are branded? And again, it will vary by regions, but in pretty much every region, 70, 80, 90% of new hotels in development are branded, which means that once those hotels come online, we will see the overall supply of brands grow. Why are brands becoming so popular and so powerful? It's because they can drive direct bookings. It's this similar conversation that Pranav was just having about OTA distribution. We see a pretty strong correlation by region between the percent of hotel brands as a percent of the market versus direct bookings made as a percent of the market. And there is a pretty strong correlation between strong brand presence and strong direct booking presence. What's driving this is the trust and confidence that these large brands have. And of course, what's driving it is their loyalty programs. Huge loyalty programs in the hotel space that have grown. What we're looking at here is the total number of loyalty members, as well as the growth in loyalty members, basically most recent year versus pre-pandemic. You can see Hyatt 100% growth in loyalty members in 2023 versus before the pandemic. Their program has doubled in size. And then look at the absolute number. Marriott, I think this is actually even an old chart. Marriott has crossed 200 million Bonvoy loyalty members. So we are seeing these huge programs. I think this one slide in many ways explains the current branded marketplace. We are seeing brands try to compete with the online travel agencies. We're seeing them try to utilize those direct website listings on Google. We are seeing them trying to grow and expand and get those direct bookings and leverage their power. And they're trying to keep travelers in their ecosystem through these loyalty programs, and they're trying to grow their loyalty programs. And so when you say, what's happening? Why did Hyatt just buy Standard Hotels? Why did Choice try and acquire Wyndham? What's driving all this? I mean, there's many, many factors driving this, but I think one of the key ones is you're seeing competition to try and grow and increase the power of the loyalty programs. The loyalty programs is the key driver of brand loyalty. Brands drive direct distribution and also help grow the scale. It's a really interesting trend that's happening in the hotel space, and it ties in with a lot of what's happening. There's a lot more in the State of Travel presentation. Of course, I won't go too much more into detail with it. You are in the home stretch. We have one more section, and we're going to turn it over to Robin to talk about experiences. We've talked about how you get to hotels, what consumers want, how you get there, where you're going to stay, but what are they actually going to do? And that's the experiences section. So we're going to give Robin the last word, and then don't forget, we're going to turn it over for Q&A. So if you have any burning questions for us, the moment is almost here where you can ask us and dialogue with us directly. So Robin, over to you to finish this.
Thanks, Seth. I'll try and be brief so that we can get to the questions. So I chose this section because outside of sustainability, experiences has been a big focus for me this year, and it's really quite a fascinating space right now. We're seeing some game-changing developments and shifts in consumer preferences. And as Varsha mentioned earlier, the important thing to note here is that the trend towards consumers prioritizing experiences over things is very well attested, and this creates a fertile environment for the sector. So the experiences space can seem like quite a complex ecosystem, so it can be useful to look at some examples of how it breaks down. So taking the multi-day tour industry as an example, and we do delve more into the day tour industry in the report further if that's of interest. So the multi-day tour industry, it's quite a big tent that incorporates a wide range of operators, suppliers, and distributors. And at times it can seem like every company in the space is running a slightly different business model. But broadly speaking, there are three core products sold by the operators: package travel, itinerary-based tours, and small ship and adventure cruises. So if we take two of the main operators in that space as examples to see how post-COVID recovery is progressing for that space, well, we're seeing some very positive signs. After an initial surge in popularity for sun and sand-focused operators like TUI, operators focused more on cultural immersion and nature-based experiences like Intrepid are bouncing back, and now we're seeing them surpass 2019 levels in terms of revenue recovery. And this is consistent with the demand patterns that are emerging. We're seeing strong demand for culturally immersive and nature experiences, and this is corroborated by various industry experts that we've spoken to. Thinking about what's actually driving traveler choices, our data shows that consumers certainly have a strong craving for adventure, cultural immersion, enriching learning experiences, and this speaks volumes about the demand that the tour space is catering to. However, with that being said, and we shouldn't be too Pollyanna-ish, our data also shows that price is still a primary factor in determining the choice of booking platform used to book tours and experiences. So lastly, let's delve a little bit into that demand more. So our survey data strongly confirms the experiences over things hypothesis, with 70% of US consumers agreeing that they would rather spend their money on experiences rather than physical goods. But in terms of what motivates travelers to book tours and experiences, we can see that they're driven by the opportunity to explore new places, to learn about cultural and history and culture, and to try new activities. So this all points to the fact that travelers are craving a sense of discovery and adventure. They want to learn about new places, connect with nature, create meaningful moments, and that's really driving the evolution of this space. And so I will leave it there and hand over.
All right, we've made it to the end of our State of Travel LinkedIn Live. We've covered a lot of different sectors. Yeah, let's bring everyone back on. Just a reminder, these are some of the wonderful Skift research analysts we have. We produce a ton of reports. If you are interested in becoming a subscriber, please research.skift.com. Reach out to us, contact support@skift.com. Contact any of us here, add us on LinkedIn. But that's going to be the end of the presentation. I'm gonna pull this slideshow off. And what we'll do is look, does anyone have any questions for us? We're happy to kind of engage in some conversation or thoughts. Please put them in the chat. Let's see what questions we have. All right. Let me ask a question. We got one from Andy, who is pretty engaged. Thank you, Andy Medic. He asked about social media booking, even at the luxury curated travel experience level. That's an interesting question. Varsha, I mean, I have some thoughts on this. Varsha, do you have some thoughts on this in terms of the social media booking idea?
Yeah, sure. So as I showed on one of the slides, that people are getting comfortable booking via social media. And we had a follow-up question in the survey which asked, okay, what about high priced travel? But our consumers or our survey respondents at least said that they are still comfortable booking via social media despite of high cost of the travel itinerary. So to answer Andy's question, I mean, 50% of our, I think around 50% of our respondents do say that they are getting comfortable using social media, but at the same time, we have survey data that shows that for such luxury curated travel experiences, people are increasingly using travel advisors. So yes, I mean there are two contradictory views here. But if you ask my personal opinion, I think yes, if you're spending so much money, you wouldn't be wanting to book via Instagram.
I saw a funny Twitter thread where Gen Zs were making fun of millennials for desktop or laptop purchases because Gen
Correct.
Zs are so willing to make big purchases on their phones, and it's like increasingly an old person thing. Oh, this is a laptop purchase. Let me get my computer out. And I notice I do that too. Whenever I check into a flight, I check in on my desktop because, so I think things are changing. I don't necessarily think so I think, yes, people are more and more comfortable with big transactions on their phones, increasingly comfortable with social media. I think it's the way that we're going. But by the way, we have a whole section on, you're asking about luxury, and Andy has another question about travel advisors. We have a whole section on travel advisors in our report. They're not going away anytime soon. They're actually incredibly important to the ecosystem. I'm not answering this question, but they're incredibly important to the ecosystem. And they're not going away. I think they can both coexist. Here's an interesting one. R.A. or R. Mork. I'm so sorry. I think it's an Irish name, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it. Do you see a correlation between growth in AI and hotels becoming more adaptive to integrated, more sustainable initiatives? So I think this is about the future of data, of technology, of what that means for sustainability. Thoughts in general on this? Maybe Robin and Pranavi, do you have any thoughts on how technology and sustainability can kind of work together? I think maybe that's a way of phrasing the question.
Why don't you start, Robin, with that?
Sure. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is in terms of tracking metrics. I think on the AI point specifically, Pranavi's probably a bit more knowledgeable than me, but on the sustainability side specifically, it's getting more and more important to and we alluded to this earlier.
Norwegian, I'm sorry. My apologies.
So in terms of demonstrating impact, and this is also outside the travel sector, having a really granular and defensible system for tracking your metrics is becoming increasingly important. The evolution of these technologies means if you're not keeping up, you're going to fall behind. And sustainability is a big differentiator. So the advance of technology and the increasing importance of sustainability that's making it an increasingly competitive space. Meaning, in order to keep up with sustainability, you're going to have to be able to keep up with AI and proper data integration. And this also relates to what we said about suspicion around greenwashing. Claims have to be backed up, and they have to be backed up with hard data. And AI is increasingly being mobilized to that task. Pranavi?
No, I think that's a great answer, Robin. Actually, I've got a good one for you, Pranavi. You're getting ready to answer. I've got a good one because
Okay.
we're trying to keep the flow going a little bit. Kim Cooper Post asks, Jackson Lowe asks, I'll get to you next, Kim, don't worry. Jackson Lowe asks, should hotel suppliers be concerned about the rise of travel porters by banks, and how concerned should they be? Pranavi, you have a lot of thoughts on this. What's your answer?
Yeah, I think the answer really comes down to so at a recent conference this year, Leni Oberg, who's the CFO of Marriott, she was asked a question, what keeps you up at night? And her answer immediately was the rise of these credit card platforms, the rise of these banks. And I think these banks have become, they're really a dark horse. They're very sneaky. They've really appeared on the space without anyone realizing it. I think companies like Chase Travel have now become the third largest OTA in the US. Even bigger than companies like Hopper now. And the reason I say it's sneaky is because all their inventory is powered. Well, most of their inventory has been powered by the OTAs themselves. And they also have huge loyalty programs. If you think about it, like nearly half of the US population own a Chase credit card and are already part of that system. So I think hotel suppliers, I think OTAs, I think everyone in the industry should be wary of these banks and these credit cards, which could end up becoming the biggest travel portals in the industry.
And this question ties into the question from Kim Post, who I almost went to first, but I think it works better this way. Kim asks, so loyalty programs are waning except in the hotel space. Anything on the OTA loyalty programs? I'll take this. I don't think that they are necessarily waning except in the hotel space. We are seeing huge growth in the hotel space. But to Pranavi's answer to the earlier question, we're also seeing huge growth in what is effectively loyalty programs in the credit card space. And we are seeing growth in the OTA space. I think Booking has done a lot of work in its Genius program. They have significant penetration among their customer base in the Genius program. They gave a number, like a third of their customers are Genius level, I think maybe even level 1 or level 2, but a high level. Expedia's One Key program has, I don't remember the exact number either off the top of my head, but over 100 million members, huge amount of members. And so we are seeing growth. I think what's happening is not that programs are waning, it's that programs are becoming more competitive than ever. We're seeing everyone try to offer OTAs. Airlines have loyalty, OTAs have loyalty, hotels have loyalty, and now credit cards have loyalty. So what we are seeing is a really interesting competition where everyone is fighting for different benefits for broader networks. I think it's about offering immediate returns, about offering broad networks where customers don't feel like they kind of got ripped off, where they're trapped. You never want a customer to feel like they're trapped, they have to book with you. You want them to be happy that they're booking with you. I like to say sometimes that loyalty is an emotion. It's not a points plan. We sometimes get those two things confused. And even in our answering this question, we refer to those as interchangeable. So that's why hotels are building these big networks, because they don't want people to feel trapped in their program. They want them to have options for when they're business travelers, options for when they're family travelers, options for when they're solo travelers. And of course, credit cards can do that. OTAs can do that very well. And that makes a more competitive landscape for everyone. So lots of interesting stuff happening in all of these spaces, and they're all tied together. Really fascinating question. Thank you for asking those, both of you, for those questions. Rue asks, what do these trends mean for luxury independent hotel operators that are not associated with a large brand? I'm going to throw this back to you, Pranavi, but anyone can jump in, and maybe Varsha, you have some thoughts on luxury traveler. What do you think? We're talking about these loyalty programs, we're talking about these brands, but some of the most incredible luxury properties in the world are independent, are unbranded. What does this mean for them?
Yeah, look, I think luxury is a beast of its own. It's very different to other parts of the chain scale. If you are a big brand trying to expand into luxury, it's very difficult to do that because a lot of these luxury independent hotels, they really have that heritage involved with them. They build a brand for many years on their own, and they have a name for themselves, which is very difficult to do if you're a large brand. So I actually think luxury independent hotel operators actually have a lot of power in the space, and you'll see that luxury has a larger share of independent hotels than you would see in other chain scales. So I think they have a lot of power and strength. And what we're seeing is that large brands like Hyatt in particular are doing a lot of M&A to acquire these luxury independent hotels, because you can't build a luxury hotel organically from scratch. It'll take much too long. So I think they have a lot of power. They have a lot of control.
And I would tack on to that the rise of soft brand collections is also a way that semi-independent hoteliers can retain their independence, especially at the higher chain scales, but still be affiliated and effectively buy into loyalty plan distribution at a cheaper price. I think that's an important one. Wow, you guys are giving us some great questions. I love this. Let's take a couple more. You guys have a little bit of time to take a few more questions. Hey, we're going to take a couple more questions. We're coming up on our time limit. I want to just remind everyone that everyone you see on this chat is going to be at the Skift Global Forum in just a few weeks, coming up in early September. So, by the way, September 17th and 19th, scan this QR code, get more info, visit. You want to have a Q&A session like this, only instead of being through a screen, you want to come talk to us in person. This is 100% the place to do it, to ask all of your burning questions. We'll all be there. Many of us will be on stage. We're going to be talking about state of travels, talking about the trends as we see them, and just interacting with all of you. So we'll keep doing some Q&A because there's been so many great questions here. But before we get any further, I do want to make sure that everyone on the chat and everyone on this call knows that you can, in fact, come see us, come ask us your questions live in person. Just visit that QR code. Okay, so let's take a few more questions, and then we'll probably wrap up on the hour. So let's ask. There's a lot here on OTA. Well, let's do this one on some thoughts here. Jose Vicente Silva, he asks, OTAs about investing in ads. Is there a business opportunity to rely on revenue from Google Hotels and organic? So I think this question is maybe about how to compete in terms of paid, how to compete with the ad spend of Expedia and Booking.com. They spend, between the two of them, they are some of the largest advertisers on Google. They spend billions of dollars advertising on Google between the two of them, and they're able to outbid and buy up some of the most important and expensive travel keywords. So I think the thought is how to use Google ads to your advantage, some of these links to your advantage to kind of circumvent that. Do you have thoughts on that, Pranavi?
Yeah, this is exactly what I was mentioning in the online travel section that I presented on. So Google is trying to democratize that search. Before, it used to be just the paid listings, and if you didn't have $13 billion, which is, by the way, the combined marketing spend of Booking and Expedia, if you don't have that much money, it's okay, because they have introduced this organic listings, and we've seen that it is democratic the way they present those listings. There isn't a dominant player. Booking and Expedia do feature on those listings, but they aren't the dominant player. And we've seen that there's a long tail of small OTAs all bidding on that platform, and the way they list the different OTAs, it's through price. So I think if you are able to differentiate yourself through price, then you will come up top on that list, regardless of how much marketing budget you have. So I think Google's organic listings is a great way to try and tap into traffic from Google.
I want to go to a question from Sonia, I believe, about, did your survey get any updates on AI advisors, AI support, or travel discovery? I actually don't know the answer to this. There's always a risk asking a question. Like a lawyer would tell you, don't ask any questions you don't know the answer to, but I'm about to do just that. Varsha, do we have any survey data on AI advisors or AI travel discovery? What do you think about that?
Not exactly this, but we do have a question which asks about the role of AI in travel planning and research. And we have seen that people are increasingly using AI to actually plan their travel. And when asked about their satisfaction levels, they seem to be highly satisfied as well. So those are the two, I think, data points that we have from our surveys. I think that
And what,
answers
what
the
what I would say on this topic, in particular this AI topic, is that AI is great when it enhances human ability. I had an interview at our Skift Data and AI Summit um, with the head of one of a technology. Sorry, let me restart that answer. I had an interview at the Skift Data and AI Summit, and we talked with Marilyn, who's at Amex GBT, about their AI efforts, and they're obviously travel advisors, corporate travel advisors, a lot, but also some leisure, about how they are integrating AI tools into using human advisors. And what they are doing is they're using advanced AI effectively as a go-between between unstructured language and requests like the chat questions that we're getting here and their structured databases that they maintain on the back end, and then use them as an interface to help empower their agents. So taking a fare code for an airline that's incredibly complicated and synthesizing it, or taking a complex question and pulling out the key points for an advisor, or helping to suggest answers. So what we're not seeing so much per se necessarily is that AI advisors replace human advisors. What we are seeing is AI enhances human advisors. We do see people who are trusting in Chat GPT, and we have survey questions. You've seen some of them, and they're in the survey. They're in the state of travel about people increasingly do trust Chat GPT and other tools for trip planning and are satisfied with them. But those are the kind of people who trust Google results anyways, who don't necessarily call up an advisor. So there is a segment of people who want that hands-on support, and those people will continue to go to advisors, and the advisors can just do their job better with AI. I want to ask one question, and again, this is a bit out of left field, but maybe some. I want to ask Shiv's question. I want to throw it to Robin because I want to give Robin a chance to talk a little bit. Maybe come at this from a regenerative, sustainable tourism lens. What do these trends mean for island states that depend on tourism but face enormous difficulties to sustain growth? And I would broaden this question a little bit as I pose it to you, Robin. This is a question that has to do with over-tourism, with maintaining culture at the same time that you welcome tourists without having tourists overrun local culture. It's a big challenge. What are your thoughts on how these trends are evolving in terms of state of travel? Robin, what do you think there?
Yeah, Seth, I think the regenerative lens is relevant here, and Shiv, I'm not sure how familiar you are with regenerative tourism. It is it's a bit of a closed shop outside of the core industry, and sort of something of a movement. But it is one of the sort of modalities that attempts to grapple with this question. It's one thing if you're a Hawaii or something, and you world-class destination, huge amount of hotel revenue, fairly strong economy, being technically part of the United States, and so there's a real disparity in terms of more fragile ecosystems, and the budget and the resources that they have available to themselves to actually maximize tourism revenue, which they depend on, because they also tend not to have large extractive industries and the like, while also minimizing or not just minimizing the negative impact, but maximizing the positive impact of tourism, and specifically over tourism. And of course, this is a hot topic at the moment, as we're seeing a backlash in even some of the more established tourist destinations like Spain and Greece. So what does it mean for island states? There's no easy answer is the answer there. Essentially, and I think this is also why there's no real unified methodology on specifically regenerative tourism, because it's very site specific, and that's actually largely to its credit, I would say, because it doesn't take a one size fits all approach, but that does mean it's very difficult to scale and to create a generalized methodology for. So unfortunately, no easy answer, but everyone simply has to draw on the resources that they have, to the greatest extent possible, track their metrics and steer accordingly, and take an approach that makes the most sense within your budget and for the sensitivities of your social and social environment and ecosystem.
Wonderful. I think that's right. If we could have answered that question in the 30 seconds of Q&A we had, it would not be it would solve itself. And these are hard questions, but important questions. So we're going to end it there. We've thank you all so much for taking the time to join us today. I see some people ask in the chat, where can I get the presentation? The presentation is free to download on Skift. You can go to Skift Research or skift.com and download the State of Travel report. I believe the link is skift.com/state of travel with hyphens in between state of travel. Alex is putting it in the chat where you can go and download. You can find it very, very easily to download. This is a free report. All of the slides come from the State of Travel. We didn't modify them at all. The full report available for you, free to download. This LinkedIn Live will also be available as a recording online for you to view. And of course, if you still want more of us, you can come and see everyone in person at the Skift Global Forum, September 17th to 19th, and we would love to see you there. With that, thanks from the entire Skift research team. We really appreciate you spending the time with us today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.